Hi, I'm Jason and welcome to DS University. Thank you for choosing the Editron E128 Medicator for the solution to your medicating and water treatment needs. Today we are troubleshooting the E128 Medicator. The key areas in troubleshooting are 1. All the E128 LEDs are off and the pump is not stroking. 2. The E128 has LEDs lit, but there's no function from the controls. 3. The E128 is stroking but not drawing chemistry. 4. The E128 draws chemistry but does not inject. 5. Alarm LED on the E128 is green. 6. Alarm LED on the E128 is red. 7. The E128 does not run in either program, 1 pulse per 1 gallon or 1 pulse per 10 gallons. This video includes key areas for. To see other troubleshooting videos, check out DelutionSolutions.com. It's best to perform troubleshooting in a clean area, but if your Editron is installed, cover your chemical bucket so you don't lose any parts. For this video, you will need a 3mm Allen wrench, diagonal pliers or cutters, small towel, flat blade screwdriver, and if you don't have a syringe, you will need the syringe kit. Part 4. If the E128 draws chemistry but does not inject, you will need to 4A. Check the air bleed valve. 4B. Inspect the foot filter. 4C. Release airlock from the pump head. 4D. Tighten the pump head. 4E. Inspect the discharge and injection valves, tubing connections, and the tube's condition. If any of the following sections from Part 4 allow the E128 to inject, you no longer need to keep watching this video. Part 4A. If the E128 draws chemistry but does not inject, check the air bleed valve. It may have been left open after priming. If so, please close the air bleed valve now. Part 4B. If the E128 draws chemistry but does not inject, inspect the foot filter. Inspect the foot filter by taking it out of the chemical bucket or stock tank. Loosen the foot filter tube nut and disconnect the PVC suction tubing, tube nut, collar, and nozzle attached. Let the tubing hang from the pump head while you inspect the foot filter. Shake it back and forth. You should hear a ceramic ball moving freely inside. If not, separate the foot filter into 3 pieces by popping the filter basket from the filter body. The filter seat may stick to the filter body. Make sure it rests in the filter basket instead to avoid losing the ceramic ball. Set the filter body aside and locate the ceramic ball in the filter seat. If there is no ceramic ball, switch out the current foot filter with a new one or call Delution Solutions at 1-800-451-6628 for assistance. Pull the filter seat out of the filter basket and set the filter basket aside. Pour the ceramic ball out of the filter seat and into your hand. Set the filter seat down and use a small towel to wipe the ceramic ball clean. Do not misplace it. While holding onto the ceramic ball, inspect the 2 blue O-rings in the grooves of the filter seat and make sure they are not damaged. Put the ceramic ball back into the filter seat and set the filter seat aside. Grab the filter body and inspect to make sure the small blue O-ring on the top of the filter body is not damaged. If any O-ring is damaged, switch out the current foot filter with a new one or call Delution Solutions at 1-800-451-6628 for assistance. Set the filter body down. Grab the filter basket and put the filter seat back into the filter basket. Insert the filter basket into the filter body and forcefully pop them together. This may take a couple of tries. Pull on the 2 sections to make sure they are connected securely. Shake the foot filter back and forth once more, verifying the ceramic ball is moving freely. Set the foot filter aside. Grab the PVC suction tubing hanging down from the suction valve. Remove the nozzle and collar from the tube and set aside. Do not lose them. Look at the end of the tube. If the tube's end is flared, use diagonal pliers or cutters to cut the flared portion off. Reattach the tube connections onto the loose end of the PVC suction tubing and be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Grab the foot filter and reattach the tube and tube connections onto the foot filter by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross thread nor over tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Always be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. This is key because without the proper orientation, it can allow air into the system, causing the E128 to not operate correctly. Lastly, place the foot filter back into the chemical bucket or stock tank, making sure it is sitting vertically. Part 4C. If the E128 draws chemistry but does not inject, release airlock from the pump head. Locate the air bleed valve on the upper left portion of the pump head and open it by turning the valve counterclockwise. Remove the bleed-off tubing from the air bleed barb and set aside. Using the syringe kit, slide the syringe onto the air bleed barb and draw the plunger back. Chemistry should enter the syringe. If no chemistry enters, call Dilution Solutions at 1-800-451-6628 for assistance. Eject the chemistry from the syringe into the chemical bucket. Now close the air bleed valve by turning it clockwise and slide the bleed-off tubing back onto the air bleed barb. Start the E128 and run a few gallons of water through. Part 4D. If the E128 draws chemistry but does not inject, tighten the pump head. Over time, the pump head may work itself loose from the pump. To check this, remove the 4 white caps on the pump head. This can be done with your finger or a flat blade screwdriver. Set the white caps aside and do not lose them. Underneath the white caps are 4 screws. Using the Allen wrench, tighten the 4 screws about 1/8 of a turn each. Reinsert the 4 white caps back over the screws. Part 4E. If the E128 draws chemistry but does not inject, inspect the 1. Discharge valve, 2. Injection valve, 3. Rigid discharge polyethylene tube condition. Discharge valve. Start with the discharge valve at the top of the pump head. Loosen the discharge valve tube nut and lift the discharge tube, nut, collar, and nozzle attached. Check to see if the black transit washer is stuck to the nozzle and remove. If not, see if it is at the top of the discharge valve. You may need to use a flat blade screwdriver to remove. If it's in either place, proceed to the next step. Make sure not to lose the O-ring directly underneath the transit washer. With the rigid discharge tube disconnected, please inspect the tubing connections. Remove the nozzle and collar from the tube and set aside. Do not lose them. Look at the end of the tube. If the tube's end is flared, use the diagonal pliers to cut the flared portion off. Slide the collar back onto the tube and make sure the collar's crown is pointing away from the tube nut. Slide the nozzle back into the tube's opening. Push the collar and nozzle together as close as possible. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Reattach the tube and tube connections onto the discharge valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Injection valve. Next, locate the injection valve in the supply line. Loosen the injection valve and disconnect the discharge tube, nut, collar, and nozzle attached. Remove the nozzle and collar from the tube and set aside. Do not lose them. Look at the end of the tube. If the tube's end is flared, use diagonal pliers to cut the flared portion off. Reattach the tube connections onto the loose end of the connected discharge tubing and be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle to compress the collar and nozzle tight together, forming a ferrule connection. Reattach the tube and tube connections onto the injection valve by hand tightening the tube nut. Do not cross-thread nor over-tighten. If the tube nut is not securing, recheck the ferrule connection. Pull the tube nut toward the nozzle once more to compress the collar and nozzle together. Retighten the tube nut until secure. Tube condition. Always be mindful of the orientation for the tubing connections. This is key because without the proper orientation, it can allow air into the system, causing the E128 to not operate correctly. To finish up, look at the rigid discharge tube's condition. If the tube's cracked, rigid, or looks really old, just replace it now. The E128 should now be properly injecting. We hope this video has been helpful with troubleshooting key areas 4 of your E128 Medicator pump. For more information, please call us at 1-800-451-6628 or visit us online at dilutionsolutions.com. I'm Jason at DS University. Thanks for watching.